Have you ever stared at your screen, unable to move, while your to-do list screams like thunder? But deep down, it's not the task that paralyzes you. It's the emptiness beneath it. They told you it's ADHD. But what if it's not? What if your soul is rebelling against the life you were told to live? Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." This isn't about focus. It's about your forgotten self. This is what you're about to uncover. Imagine waking up every day wearing a mask. Not the theatrical kind, but one stitched from quiet survival. You smile when you should, respond when expected, and keep scrolling through a life that doesn't feel like it's yours. You check your phone 15 times before breakfast, not because you're curious, because you're escaping. From what? From the silence. From yourself. Somewhere along the way, someone told you, you're too distracted. You're not consistent. You lack discipline. So you believed them. You put on the ADHD label like armor. A way to explain the chaos. But the real chaos is much deeper. It's not your brain that's scattered. It's your soul trying to wake you up. Carl Jung once said that neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. But what happens when you suppress that suffering for too long? It doesn't disappear. It disguises itself. You start calling it anxiety, procrastination, overthinking, or ADHD. But the truth is, your soul is suffocating in a world that demands efficiency over meaning, performance over presence. It's not that you can't focus. It's that nothing around you deserves your focus anymore. You were not born for this mechanical rhythm. Wake up, work, consume, scroll, sleep, repeat. That's not living. That's dying in slow motion. Your soul doesn't have a disorder, has a message. There's a myth, ancient and raw, about a god who fell from the heavens and wandered the earth, disguised as a beggar. He knocked on doors. No one recognized him. They were too busy, too afraid, too distracted, that God lives inside you. And you've been ignoring its knock for years. You think your restlessness is dysfunction. But what if it's a sacred signal? What if the discomfort is the invitation? The part of you that forgets appointments, loses focus, zones out. Maybe it's not broken. Maybe it's the last piece of you still trying to stay human. We were never meant to live in constant stimulation. Your nervous system isn't designed for 9 tabs open in your browser and 900 expectations in your chest. The more you force yourself to be normal, the more abnormal your inner world becomes. You scroll because the present moment has become unbearable. You multitask because stillness feels like death. But what if stillness is exactly where you'll find life again? You weren't born to manage tasks. You were born to unfold, and the part of you they call disordered is the only part that still remembers that. Your persona, the mask you wear to survive, was built in a society that rewards numbness. But your soul doesn't care about your performance. It wants presence. The longer you ignore it, the more symptoms appear. Distraction, forgetfulness, apathy, noise. But underneath it all is the real crisis. A soul abandoned by its own owner. You don't need more apps. You need to come home. To do that, you must walk into the place you've been avoiding, your inner world, what comes next could truly shift the way you see your inner world. There's a voice inside you. It speaks in sighs, in forgotten dreams, in the moments you stare at the ceiling at 2 a.m. But you've been drowning it in podcasts, background noise, and self-help checklists. That voice doesn't care about dopamine hacks. It whispers of something much older. Something you knew as a child, before the world taught you to fit in. What if the so-called disorder is just your soul refusing to live someone else's life? We've mistaken the cries of the inner self for symptoms, but a symptom is only a message misread. In Jungian terms, the inner child is not just a memory. It's the guardian of your original essence, and that child is furious. Not because you're lazy, not because you're broken, but because you abandoned what was sacred: wonder, spontaneity, depth. Each time you chose duty over joy, efficiency over truth, approval over authenticity, that child withdrew a little more. Now it shows up as rebellion. You can't sit still. You can't force focus. You sabotage routines. You forget the plan. But this rebellion is not disorder. It's a protest from the last sacred part of you. In myth, the labyrinth is not just a prison. It's a map. And you, whether you know it or not, are already inside it. You wake up every morning trying to find the exit. But the more you run, the more lost you feel. That's because this isn't a maze to escape. It's a ritual to transform. In the center of the labyrinth is the Minotaur, the beast you fear, your shadow. All the parts you disowned to be liked, accepted, and normal. The world calls it ADHD. You think it's your flaw. But what if it's the creature guarding the gate to your freedom? You don't need to fix the distraction. You need to face what the distraction is protecting you from. Every time you try to function like they do, follow their routines, keep up with their pace, believe in their version of success, something inside you cracks. That's because you're wearing a mask meant for someone else. Jung called this the persona, a necessary fiction we present to the world. But when the persona becomes a prison, the soul begins to sabotage. You forget meetings. You lose focus. You resist structure, not because you're incapable, but because you're incompatible with a life that dishonors your truth. You're not disordered. You're disoriented in a world that exiled the sacred. If you keep ignoring the soul's rebellion, you'll wake up one day unable to feel anything at all. That's when distraction becomes despair. Scrolling becomes dissociation. And you start thinking, maybe something's wrong with me. But no diagnosis can describe the grief of a soul that was never heard. This isn't about fixing your mind. It's about reclaiming your depth. Because buried, beneath the noise, the restlessness, the shame, is your original fire. Untamed, unruined, unapologetic. And it's waiting for you to stop labeling it and start listening. You haven't seen the real truth yet. There was a time when silence was sacred. People sat by fires, listening to the wind. They read the stars like poetry. They walked, not to arrive, but to feel the earth speak beneath their feet. But now, your nervous system is trained to sprint through life. You check 3 apps before brushing your teeth. You panic when there's nothing to do. And still you wonder, why can't I focus? Carl Jung once said, "Hurry is not of the devil, it is the devil, because what rushes you rules you. Your inability to focus may not be a disorder. It may be your soul longing for rhythm, not productivity." In Jungian psychology, the anima represents the inner feminine, the realm of feeling, intuition, creativity, and stillness. Most people, especially in modern cultures, exile the anima. They call her irrational, slow, or too much. But she doesn't disappear. She hides and haunts you. She shows up when you try to force yourself to follow linear, rigid systems. She resists your calendar. She distracts your mind with dreams, with songs, with strange feelings you can't explain. She's not sabotaging you. She's inviting you to feel again. What if your mind wanders because it's trying to return home? You think you're breaking down, but what if you're breaking open? In alchemy, every transformation begins with calcination, a burning away of false structures. When you can't keep up anymore, when even the smallest task feels like lifting a mountain, you've entered the fire. But that fire is sacred. It doesn't destroy you. It strips away what you're not. So what you are can finally emerge. This isn't failure. It's initiation. You're not malfunctioning. You're molting. There's an old symbolic tale. A child finds a golden feather in the forest, shimmering, otherworldly. They take it home. But every adult they show tells them, "Stop wasting time. Focus. That's not real." So the child buries the feather in shame. But years later, their body begins to ache. They lose joy. They forget why they ever loved anything. Until one day, they dig through the dirt of memory and find it again. That golden feather is your deep self, your original vision, your soul's calling. You buried it to survive. But now, to truly live, you must return for it. You haven't seen the real truth yet. Every time you silenced your needs to meet expectations, every time you laughed when you wanted to cry, every time you kept moving when your soul begged you to rest, a version of you was built, shiny, functional, praised, but hollow. This version can scroll for hours, attend every meeting, memorize 10 productivity hacks, yet still lie awake at night asking, "What's wrong with me?" But nothing is wrong. Something is just missing, and it's not a diagnosis. It's your essence, the part of you that was never meant to adapt to dysfunction. Carl Jung called it individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming who you truly are, not who the world trained you to be. This path isn't efficient, it's not linear, and it certainly doesn't look productive from the outside. But it's the only path that leads inward. It begins with rebellion, not loud, external revolt, but the quiet refusal to keep betraying your soul. You slow down, you feel, you listen, you start to say, "I don't need to do more. I need to remember who I am." You were not born scattered. You were born sensitive, alive, deep, intuitive. But in a world that worships speed, your sensitivity was labeled a flaw. Now it's time to reclaim it. You are not lazy. You are longing. You are not disordered. You are disoriented from too many years of walking a path that was never yours. You don't need another label. You need liberation. This begins the moment you stop asking, "How do I fix my mind?" and start asking, What is my soul trying to say? Imagine this. You stand in a room of mirrors. Each one shows a distorted version of you. Some too fast, some too perfect, some too empty. But in the center, a single candle flickers. Not loud, not grand, just real. You move closer, and in its soft glow, your true face appears. Not broken, not failing, just forgotten, now remembered. Because the truth is this: you never lacked focus. You lacked permission to live from your center. You're not ADHD, you're awakening. You haven't seen the real truth yet.